There's power in a drum beat on a hill above the sea. Power in the voice of a supporter. But it all amounts to nothing. Together we don't sing. There's power when we're not oases. And they go forever. Oh, Town, Stingery. Valley and mountain, chaparral to the sea. And the colors of our rainbow, sunset, orange, Tory, green. There's power when we're not oases. SC loyal forever. Someday in North County. Desert to islands. Get back on you and me. All our voices strong together as we cheer on our team.
Welcome to the Loyal Locals podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Dyer, back at it for another week of discussing the team that doesn't exist, but we actually do have a lot of things to talk about. There's some things going on in the group, big meeting tomorrow, and we are looking for a new name for this podcast, so we're going to solicit suggestions there. There is local soccer news we're going to touch upon, and whatever else comes up. But let's bring on producer John Cross. John, did I do it right? Is that what we're talking about today?
I think you pretty much covered it. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I've been totally disconnected from the soccer world because I've been playing this game called Alan Wake 2, and it's like this conceptual detective mystery where like you play this writer and then you play this cop who might be just a character in the writer's story. You don't really know. Anyway, it's very engrossing and a lot of fun and really kind of consuming a lot of my free time in the last few days. What have you been up to?
Well, I don't know if you can see behind me. My studio here is a little bit of a mess because there's no tapes on this, but I've been doing a lot of digitizing and archiving of some old 8mm and Super 8mm films and videotapes, and that's been taken up a lot of my time. It's very time and labor intensive.
I have been similarly productive. I know it sounds like I'm just gaming, but I have been taking video of my kids' high school soccer games and then like trying to pull highlights, which is incredible. I don't know if you've ever watched high school soccer, but it's incredibly difficult to like pull highlights from because it's bad. High school soccer is terrible. And you really just get a bunch of, I've seen it called derisively online jungle ball, where kids are really just kicking the ball in the air and then chasing it down. And it's not the beautiful game at all times, but I am trying to be the good soccer dad and find the gems in there, which, as you know, can be pretty time consuming.
It can be, yes. Very much so.
All right, so let's hit on this. Let's hit on the SG stuff first, because I know there's a leadership meeting tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, correct.
This is the last leadership meeting of the calendar year.
That is correct. And we have quite a bit that will be on the agenda. So hopefully there'll be some news for our next show on Tuesday, but maybe some things will be out in Discord. It depends what we talk about, but I mean, we're running out of time here. We've got elections that need to happen, and we have memberships for whatever those are going to look like. Those need to happen as we get ready into our next year, and just solidifying our path a little more. Like we said before, we set a bit of a direction to head towards SDFC, as well as, work better with other supporter groups in our region in San Diego, and we need to really define what that looks like. So there's quite a large agenda from my understanding, and then we'll see what happens. Hopefully we'll have some
Is it like an omnibus bill? News. I don't know what that is, but I like the sound. I like the word omnibus. Sounds like an old British documentary series from the 80s, right? The omnibus.
There are a few things that are pending. I know I have some stuff up there And I have a series of things, but it kind of depends how the first thing goes on whether the others will be applicable or not, to just kind of help our direction. So we'll see.
This
We'll
is
see
like
what
some
happens.
inside the Beltway stuff because I know we don't really talk about like the government of the locals, right? I don't think people come here for that sort of information,
Probably not.
but there is a lot of important things that go on behind the scenes to make the group function, right? Like it's a
Correct.
nonprofit, and there's responsibilities in these leadership roles that are defined and have to, be done a certain way, right? And this is what we're asking people to step up and do as we move ahead. And yeah, I think it takes a certain type of person to be willing to do that. And if you have your shit together, please come and help out.
And it takes, I mean, you bring up a good point. There are a lot of things that need to be done behind the scenes. I mean, even more than drum circles and helping arrange TIFO choreography
You
and
mean I
painting
can't
and all
just
of
show
that.
up and drink beer? There's
You can. That is an
okay, okay.
option. A lot of people do that. But there's work, and there's some work that needs to be done on a legal and fiscal kind of level for how we're organized, and there's work that amazing work that a lot of people do with all our fun stuff, right? That so that we can, for those of us who want to, or maybe want to for a game, not do some of those things, just show up and have a beer and hang out with people and chant and drum and sing. But there's always stuff that needs to be done in the background to help make all that a success. And there are big things and there are little things. And the more people we can get involved in some of that background stuff, the more we can do, for one, and the easier it just is on everyone. So there's not just, you know, a handful of people who end up carrying the brunt of the work in the background.
Sure, sure. And so the speaking of these all the work that goes into a supporter group. So I know that because I watched your documentary from a few years ago about the founding of the locals, I know that a lot of the stuff that went into our founding, our founding fathers and mothers, in the sacred constitution and bylaws of the locals, a lot of this stuff was inspired, much like our own constitution being inspired by the work of these British academics and so forth. Our locals bylaws were inspired by those of 3252, which is the supporter group for the Los Angeles Football Club, who were in the MLS finals. Now, I don't care about MLS, the game, what happened on the field. Somebody won the finals, I'm sure. But what is interesting is that in the conference finals in LA, the supporter group lit off a bunch of flares, which looks incredible in that supporter section where you have all the flares. They did this last year with the Naruto Dragon Ball Z guy and all the fire behind it. Was incredible last year. It was incredible this year, but there was something different about this year. Can you maybe explain for the folks what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, I think this brings up so many overlapping conversations. But last year, and I don't know exactly what happened behind the scenes, but in general, LAFC during the finals did a TIFO with flares. And even by Don Garber publicly through social media were praised for it. Then they do a TIFO this time around with flares. And, now the club is fined $100,000 and they have suspended some of the rights of the supporter group for home matches. And I don't know what that means or what the details are. I don't know if that'll all be resolved by the time next year rolls around. This might just be a bunch of nothing really, other than the fine for the club. But I think this brings up, like, let me back up. There's been a ton of conversation on social media about this. And I think some of the problems with some of these conversations is people are coming at from all different standpoints.
Well,
There's
yeah,
the
fans of
idea
other
of
clubs were super excited to see them get fined. Like, oh, awesome! MLS is trying to stamp out supporter culture. This is good. Screw LAFC. Like, it was like partisan, and like, you're not my club, so I want bad things to happen to you.
right. I mean, you get some of that. You get the people who want to see some exciting, I'll call it innovative, but maybe a little more innovative for MLS because you don't always see it all the time, not necessarily for around the world. But there are some supporter groups that would like to do some more creative things with their opening match. I'll call it choreography for lack of a better word, whether it's a tifo or things in the stands or any combination of those things. And I think, if you ask a lot of supporter groups, they feel a little handcuffed by some of the rules for supporters with Major League Soccer. And these are some of the conversations we would like to have with SDFC to figure out what exactly are these parameters. Yes, MLS has their, rules. Anybody can see them and go online, but like, what else? Is there anything else we need to know about? But I think that argument about the choreography also gets lost in, the idea of an open road flare, an incendiary device. Because if you look at it, from the other lens, we know we have intoxicated people in stands. And if we're going to start handing out incendiary devices to people, I mean, that's a recipe for someone to get hurt. So then you have some people who are arguing from that side. And I think people are arguing different points. There is a safety issue. But instead of just, I think too many times we make these binary conversations, it's right or it's wrong, or they should do it or they shouldn't do it. Instead of trying to have a conversation, if someone wants to try to do something like this, how could we do it? Because there has to be a pathway. There's always a pathway that you can do it if people are willing to work towards that. But I think, like you said, you get opposing supporter groups that are just happy that they got fined, because it's the other team, and not thinking about the bigger ramifications, or other supporter groups unhappy, or I guess happy they're fined because they would also like to do something and they just would like to know where the line is. When you have the commissioner one year say, wow, amazing work, before the MLS Cup in 2022, and now in a semifinal match, it happens, and then a few days later, your club's fined $100,000 for
little inconsistent.
Basically the same thing. Is a little different. Again, I don't know all the specifics. Maybe they had stuff approved last time and they didn't this time. Maybe they just assumed it was okay. I don't know. Maybe they just decided to give a big middle finger to MLS and Don Garber and say we're going to do it anyway. I don't know. I don't know any of the specifics around it. But I do know there's a lot of people who'd like to get more creative with their choreography. And that's, again, a conversation we'd like to have with SDFC is, what are those parameters? What are we allowed to do or not do? What is your line?
The key to growing Major League Soccer fandom in the U.S., because there's a ton of Premier League soccer fandom, there's a ton of Liga MX fandom in the United States, but MLS lags those leagues, right? Like, if you really want to grow MLS fandom in the U.S., the most first thing you have to do is stamp out the most passionate supporters you have. You want to demoralize and make sure that they feel the most put upon, the most constrained. You want to make sure that you tamp out the most enthusiastic of your fans. That way the product looks generic and stale, and that brings in a lot more support for Major League Soccer.
I think there are some people who actually think that way.
Well, there is this thing where it's like the imaginary middle, right? Like in the world of politics, right? Like, you have people who are convinced that there is some kind of middle ground. There is some kind of group of people who you can get if you just make the edges look a little smoother and you make the most robust and colorful parts of whatever you are dulled down enough to appeal to the most, you know, middle brow, vanilla, basic consumer, right? You're trying to capture people who drive silver Toyota Camrys, right? Like, no offense to anybody, they're great cars, great color, but you know what I mean? Like, you are looking for the vanilla, the beige, the people who are not, you know, who could be turned off by a robust or violent or vibrant supporter culture, which I think is incredibly well. I think it's wrong. First of all, I'm no surprise here, because when you look at the thing that gets people excited whenever they see pictures from these leagues in South America and these leagues in Europe where supporters are doing the most incredible creative things with their rituals, with their pregame tifos, and it is inspiring. And people who are not soccer people will share those photos around on their social media, like, "Wow, look at this! This is incredible!" Like, because it has that ability, and it is from the fans, and it's the thing that makes this game unique from all the other sports. You don't get that in the NBA. You don't get that in the NFL. In the NFL, you get this terrible corporate, fan experience. You go to an NFL game and they stop the game every 5 minutes to go to a commercial. Being at an NFL game is, to me, a nightmare. It's got to be the worst in-stadium fan experience in pro sports, like, period, because you really are there as a to make it look good on TV. The product on the field is not for the enjoyment of the people in the stands, whereas football, soccer really is. You don't take a break at all. There's no timeout. There's no TV commercials. Like, it really is about the experience in the stadium. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm way off. Maybe they've got reams of consumer research that says, the more like the NFL we can get, maybe in some fantasy world, we can grow this league to be as big as the NFL. But I think they're totally missing the boat here. The one thing that you have that none of the other pro sports have is supporter culture. The one thing you have that nobody else has is this this organic, fan-driven machine that will just happen if you let it happen. If you let your most passionate fans be creative and do the things that supporter groups around the world do, you're already doing something that is lacking in every other pro sport. Like, why do you want to be like everybody else when you can be something incredible and unique?
I say it to everyone that I get a chance who will listen to me. I think it comes down to community. It always comes down. That's what you get in soccer. That's what you get with supporter groups. You get a strong sense of community. And whether it's doing the opening game choreography or chanting throughout the game, you are building and strengthening that community around that team. And that can grow beyond just a supporter group and entail your community that you live in. And this ultimately gets the difference between kind of the franchise model, or it's not even truly a franchise model in MLS, and clubs, more traditional clubs, because they are deep rooted in their community. I hear people talk about, oh, they have all this history. Yes, they do, but it's not as much about the overall history, which is a strong part, but it's that deep sense of community that they have, and those teams. And I think what frustrates me the most about Major League Soccer is its, I was going to say lack of will, but almost a determination against that community. Like you said, kind of going for the the average fan. And to me, that average fan's going to come and go. They'll be there sometime. It's the Messi effect. The average fan is showing up for Messi to watch Messi, but you're not seeing the strengthening of communities around each of these teams. In fact, because of the raising of the ticket prices, you are negatively impacting the communities that have been built up around these existing teams. And I think that's the piece that Major League Soccer overlooks completely is building strong communities around those teams and letting that grow and be built up organically. And partly, I think you alluded to it before, I think they're afraid of that because that takes away some power and control that they have.
Yeah, I think there are people who are fans, certainly I'm this is true for me. Like, one thing that got me so into soccer is that it's not the NFL. It's like the antithesis of the NFL, just the fact that you can just watch the game and not be bombarded by moronic commercials every 2 minutes. I mean, it drives me nuts. I don't watch a lot of NFL anymore, but when I do, it kills me. I guess maybe I'm spoiled from, streaming, and yes, I pay more so I don't have to watch commercials on Hulu and all that because I freaking hate them. I hate them. But it's I think, to put a bow on this little segment, is I'd say we are on the side of 3252. I think that is a safe thing to say. We are team 3252, not team MLS on this one.
Yeah, just for me, especially that sense of community. But in keeping the bow on it and not opening it back up and doing a little, I guess, local / SDFC news, since we've talked about that a little bit. You mentioned last podcast that it was looking like there were going to be some events in December, or at least one event for all.
The December to Remember supporter event.
Yeah, apparently not happening. It sounds like it got pushed back to at least January. Partly, I think, because it was so close to Christmas Day. It was like the 21st or something is the date they were looking at. I think they just got feedback from a lot of people saying, you're going to have a hard time pulling people in. So it looks like now it's moving towards sometime in January. So keep your ears out for that. There will be a leadership one. I think still my understanding is there will be a leadership. Some members of Locals leadership will meet with leadership of the other SGs at some kind of function this month. So we have that going on as well. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else specific. A drum circle is likely to happen in January as well, to start some initial practice for figuring out what the chants are going to be for the new team.
That's it's interesting. We had similar things ahead of Loyal starting up, and the number of people. I mean, this is obvious. Maybe I'm just saying something that's very obvious, but the number of people that show up at these preseason drum circles versus the number of people who show up on game day wanting to play drums. It's funny. I don't know. Maybe not funny, but it is predictable. So I if you want to do this, if you want to get involved in it, come to the preseason stuff, because it's not a lot of people go, so you can meet the other people that are committed and who are going to be a real part of whatever's going on. I do want to talk a little bit about some local soccer, because I think we have a championship to talk about.
You have a new national champion, yes. So congratulations to Point Loma Nazarene. Their women's team won the Division II national championship over the weekend.
Incredible.
I don't know if anybody had the chance to catch the game either. I think it was televised somewhere, somehow. At least that's what I heard. I did not see it. I've seen some highlights on social media. So congratulations to them for taking home the Division II national championship.
Listen, it's no small thing. I know a lot of people, their ideas of college sports is D1 or nothing, right? And I got to just say, like in soccer, like that is not the case. There are a lot of Division 1 programs, especially on the women's side. You know, your top D2 women's programs are going to just run over probably half of the Division 1 programs out there. There is some really good soccer in the lower divisions in college. Uh, it's not like college football where you have these cupcake teams in the lower divisions. Soccer is a much more egalitarian sport, and these programs at smaller schools can really get some good players and have some great results on the field. So it's no small feat for Point Loma. And plus, I don't know if you've been to their soccer field. Incredible. Just incredible. It's right there, like on the cliff.
The cliff, yeah, it's beautiful.
It is incredible. Yeah.
I had some former players that played there. Actually, one was playing there, their brother was playing somewhere else, and the brother's team came down to play Point Loma, so I went out to watch. And it's the first time I had been out there, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, what a location for a field.
Yeah,
It's
it's enough to make you want to convert to Catholicism and hit up. You don't have to be a Catholic to go to these schools. I have a friend who is not Catholic. He's sending his kid to one of these Catholic high schools, and every time I see him, I ask him how the conversion's going, and just kind of a running gag. But let's stay on the coast. Let's go up the coast a little bit to Monterey Bay. We do have some loyal player news. A couple players from the team are moving up there.
Yeah, Guzman is up there, and then Xavi got signed up there. So hopefully he'll continue scoring goals in Monterey Bay.
Yeah,
but I think Frank Yallop is a good coach for him. I think that will be a good experience and get him to grow. It sounds like they would like to get him in the rotation more than he had with San Diego Loyal. I mean, good thing and bad thing for him, he got a lot of great people to learn from. We had some good experienced players ahead of him in midfield. I mean, 4 solid midfielders.
Mm-hmm.
But he might get his time to shine in the USL Championship this next season. So we have Superfan Dan. For all those who know Superfan Dan up in Monterey, he has extended an invitation that they will welcome any locals to come up there and watch a match and cheer on some former Loyal players.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of stay connected to these guys. If you're not in the Discord, one of our members, Corbin, has taken it upon himself to track every player who has ever worn Tory, and some who never did, because it was like the first 2 years when we didn't have it. Everyone, if you want to find out where these guys have gone on to, he's got a database, a spreadsheet that is just on Discord. You can check up on all of your favorite players or not so favorite players and see where they're at now. And I think there's a few players that haven't been announced yet from the squad, some Team 1 guys who are probably landing somewhere, but that information isn't public yet. There is more to come there. So yeah, I'm excited to see where everybody goes and have continued success. I'd like to see some of these guys win a cup in wherever they go.
Yeah, it'll definitely keep me, keep
Unless
my ear
it's
to
Phoenix.
the ground for a USL Championship.
I don't think any of our guys went to Phoenix, right? Nobody's going to Rising. Is that,
I don't think anybody has.
Probably not.
I will say yes, because I don't know anything. I'm not saying that is something that's coming, but I mean, I would be surprised if nobody did. With all the teams and players we have, and
Mm-hmm.
teams pick up. We have good players, and there's good players
Right.
to pick up. So maybe they've tried. I don't know.
I mean, you're dead to me if you do. So just kind of, I know you. I know my opinion is one that players are very concerned with, but there's a lot of teams in USL. You don't got to go to that one.
All right, I would like to give a quick shout out again to Puma. We did last week as well, but we're still moving forward on this possible 2024 locals kit with MTS branding on the front. So it was kind of I think a hope and a prayer a little bit to see what happened at first, and it looks like there's some progress being made. So that might, we'll see. We're still a long way from pulling the trigger, but it's moving forward. So there hasn't been shut down. So
that's super
keep
cool.
Going with that, and that would be cool if we could do something. And a lot of the talk on Discord also, not just maybe MTS if we get them, but cycle through some San Diego organizations, some good things that we could do to maybe do a front of the kit. I'll call it sponsor, but we're not looking for money from any of these people. Like we'd like to, work with them to do it as a sponsor to help promote any of these San Diego organizations.
Sure. So you do have to be careful. I don't know if you saw, I posted in Discord a story out of San Antonio. A local kind of artist designs jerseys, much like our own. Corbin likes to mock up jerseys, and I think he's had a lot of success in contests, right? But there's another artist in San Antonio who does the same thing. He made a fan jersey for the San Antonio Spurs featuring the colors of a local chain of restaurants called Fred's Fish Fry. And people really were excited about this jersey. The colors are it was just so well done. It went viral on that part of the internet on Twitter, and the owners of Fred's Fish Fry sued the young artist. Not only did they sue, so this guy works at a food truck. He works at a food truck. That's his job. That's how he makes his money. He does this jersey design like on the side as a hobby. Fred's Fish Fry, not only do they sue the guy, they sue the owner of the food truck, who has nothing to do with the jersey, with any of this, just happens to be the employer of the guy. And so he fires him. He fires the guy. It's a headache. Like, I don't need this negative publicity, so take a hike. And just a really kind of a shitty story for one, because, whether he's breaking any laws or not is irrelevant. Anybody can sue anybody for any reason in the U.S. court system, and it's on you to defend yourself. And if it is frivolous, get that thing thrown out, which is going to cost you money. Now, there are some states that have these anti-slap laws to mitigate some of these abusive lawsuits, but a wealthy person can afford to just file lawsuits left and right. But a food truck owner, a food truck employee, maybe that threat of a lawsuit is enough to scare them away. And it wasn't just a threat; the suit was filed in court. So. Just a really crappy story, but also one to remind people to, cover your ass when it comes to IP, because there are some litigious people in this country.
Yeah, and I think just in general, you ought to reach out. Like, there's no way we should ever just throw somebody's logo on our shirt and run with it. Plus, there's partnerships we can build and work with them. So I have no idea what happened. I read the article, but I had so many questions after reading it that weren't answered. I just was curious how it came about, or if anybody ever reached out to anybody else to try to find a solution, or if it was just, that's it. We're suing.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that long ago that the jersey went around the viral. So, like, yeah, it seems to be. I mean, it's not like the guy through the logo on the jersey. It's just like the color scheme and some design elements. It's
it hinted to it.
Probably not under like, for art, an artist does have a lot of room to be inspired and reinterpret things, but whenever you then turn around and make money, it becomes a lot more complicated. But I doubt that this thing has much merit to it. But it doesn't matter. you can bully people out of it if you've got the resources to do it. So to move on, what is coming up for us? This show, this podcast, the Loyal Locals podcast, the Loyal gone for all intents and purposes. The podcast remains and will continue. What's the rest of the year look like? Are we going to have another show before the turn of the calendar? And what are we doing about this name?
We will have one more show, and then we will be taking a winter break for I don't know how long. Kind of depends on some things here, but at least a week. Because the show after next week would be the 26th, and then, and then we're talking, I don't know, the 2nd of January or something. So we might take a couple weeks off here and then resume that second week of January. But next week should be a big show, I imagine, because all the stuff that we decide on in Congress, I'm sure some things will start to come out in Discord as we go through the week. But I'm sure there's a lot of things we'll be covering because there'll be election stuff to talk about. There's, I'm guessing there's going to be memberships. There's going to be a whole bunch of things that we need to talk about, and especially leave people with before we take our 2-week break and head into January, where we should be doing our elections. So next show should be a big one. And I'd like to come back to something that that Jeff had said. This is actually one of the things that I am hoping to change a little more. I will be vocal about this. I think our membership should have easier access to the things that happen in Congress, because this is your group, right? So you should have some insight of what's happening in Congress. So hopefully that's one of the things we will clean up and straighten up as we move into the next year. So I'm guessing Jeff mentioned that as a joke. I hope so. But yes, I really hope that as we move forward, we can be more transparent about the ins and outs and what's happening in Congress, so people are aware of some things ahead of time. We can actually have some discussion sometimes ahead of time before we have our meetings.
Yeah, you guys should start following the Brown Act and just posting your the agenda 72 hours before the meeting, allowing public comment. You could have you could stream it. We can invite the folks, the COVID anti-mask people to come in and scream at y'all, and there's a lot of fun to be had.
Well, except for your last item there, those are some things that are under consideration moving forward. So we could do more both official listening sessions for members as well. So kind of like a public comments area at a traditional meeting. And whether we record them or not, those are all things that are up in the air for discussion. But I would like to see more transparency moving forward from our Congress.
It sounds like a platform for somebody who might be running for some leadership positions. I don't know, John, is there some kind of announcement you would like to make on the show today? Are you throwing your hat in the ring for higher office?
I'd like to be clear. No, I am not throwing my hat in for any higher office. But one of the things up for discussion is restructuring our leadership. So could there be something I might be interested in doing? Possibly. It depends on what happens at the meeting and the restructuring. And hopefully, depending what happens, that piece needs to get decided on whether we're even going to restructure anything at all or not in order to know what we need to do for elections. So if we're just keeping everything the same, it's easy to do the elections. We know exactly what the positions are. But if we start making some changes, then we need to understand, okay, then how does this impact what we need for the upcoming elections? So those are some big discussions that will be happening at Congress on Wednesday night.
So if you are not in Discord, I invite you to please get in there, join the community and the conversation, and whatever comes out of that meeting will probably be discussed in Discord before next Tuesday's podcast. But if you don't, or if you, even if you do, join us next week for our last show, maybe of the year, definitely before the holiday. And yeah, we'll see y'all. We'll see y'all again.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Any day or forever, oh,